What happens when one of the most beloved figures in Hollywood walks into a studio, expecting the usual respect, only to find himself face to face with an ambush aimed at dismantling everything he stands for? When Keanu Reeves, the actor whose name is synonymous with kindness, humility, and authenticity, steps onto the View set that autumn morning, no one could have predicted the explosive confrontation about to unfold. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone awry. It was a reckoning. A collision between manufactured outrage and authentic dignity. When Hollywood's moral theater collided with real principle, and one man's quiet strength became the force that rattled the entertainment industry. The result was a moment that would be remembered forever. The ABC studio hummed with its usual pre-show chaos. Tuesday morning was like any other. The production assistants rushed through the hallways, clipboards in hand, coffee cups in tow. The camera operators adjusted their equipment with precision, making sure every angle was perfect. In the green room, makeup artists prepared the day's guests while monitors flashed the opening credits of The View's the show that had become an institution over the past 2 decades. Keanu Reeves, at 58, sat quietly in the guest chair, his presence both commanding and understated. He'd earned his place as one of Hollywood's most enduring stars. But his true reputation was built not on his box office success or his action-packed roles, but on the kindness and respect he consistently showed to those around him. Stories of his generosity were legendary, offering his seat to a tired nurse on the subway, making anonymous donations to children's hospitals, treating every crew member with the same respect as the top directors. Keanu had arrived at the studio expecting a routine promotional appearance. His latest film, The Guardian Redemption, was breaking box office records, and the studio had planned the usual interviews and light-hearted conversations. The View had promised to be a friendly environment perfect for a quick discussion of his work, maybe a few laughs, and an opportunity to promote his charitable foundation. Nothing controversial, nothing complicated, but Keanu had no idea that Joy Behar had other plans. Known for her sharp wit and fierce opinions, Joy was about to push him into unfamiliar territory. Joy had made her mark on The View by transforming it from a light-hearted daytime talk show into a platform for political and social commentary. She'd spent years grilling celebrities on their political views, their social media posts, and their charity work. No one was exempt from her probing questions, especially those who didn't align with her worldview. And today, Keanu Reeves was her target. For years, Keanu had avoided this kind of confrontation. He'd lived his life by a simple code: be good, do good, and let actions speak louder than words. In an industry where every celebrity was eager to flaunt their moral superiority, Keanu had remained humble, preferring to keep his beliefs and charitable efforts private. But to Joy, silence was complicity. She saw his unwillingness to publicly align with her politics as cowardice that needed to be exposed. The studio audience, unaware of what was brewing, filed in with eager anticipation. Many had come specifically to see Keanu, clutching photos they hoped he would sign. They expected the usual light banter, some jokes, maybe a touching anecdote or two. The atmosphere was warm, welcoming, and comfortable. Just like any other episode of The View, behind the scenes, the production team was wrapping up their final checks. Sound engineers adjusted microphone levels. Camera angles were reviewed. Everything was in place for another smooth broadcast. But there was something different in the air that morning, a subtle undercurrent of tension. Joy Behar sat in her chair, radiating an energy that suggested she was preparing for something much bigger than the usual chit-chat. Her co-hosts had seen this before. It's almost predatory calm. The focused intensity that meant Joy was gearing up for a showdown. They exchanged glances, sensing that this would not be the typical, easy morning interview. And then, the moment arrived. Keanu entered the studio to a warm round of applause. He smiled, waved, and sat down in the guest chair with his usual relaxed demeanor. The first few minutes went as expected. They discussed The Guardian redemption, shared anecdotes from the set, and exchanged friendly banter. Keanu answered each question with his trademark humility, always redirecting credit to his co-stars and crew. The audience laughed at his jokes. The conversation was light and engaging, nothing out of the ordinary, but just as the energy in the room seemed to settle. Joy leaned forward, her posture shifting. The temperature in the studio dropped. "Keanu," she said, her voice cutting through the comfortable atmosphere. "Can I ask you something?" The phrasing alone should have been a warning. It wasn't "I have a question" or "let me ask you about it." Was, "Can I ask you something?" The politeness was a veneer, masking the attack she was about to launch. Keanu, still smiling, leaned in, his face open and receptive. "Of course," he replied. "You talk a lot about values and responsibility, about mentoring the next generation, about hard work," Joy began, her voice carrying a hint of something sharper now. "But I'm curious, how do you reconcile that with some of the choices you've made in your personal life?" The studio tensed. The air shifted. The question was a direct jab, carefully constructed to provoke. Joy Behar wasn't asking about his professional career or his film work. She was digging into his personal life, his marriages, his beliefs. Everything he'd worked so hard to keep private. Keanu's face didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. He leaned forward slightly, his voice controlled, but with an unmistakable edge. "I'm not sure I followed. Joy, what choices are you referring to?" Joy pressed on, sensing her moment of attack. "Well, you've been married 3 times. You've had very public relationships that ended in very public ways. You've been involved in controversial organizations and belief systems. And yet, here you are, talking about values and mentorship, as if..." The tension in the room was now undeniable. The audience, once warm and welcoming, now sat on the edge of their seats, unsure of what would happen next. And Keanu Reeves, for the first time in decades, was no longer the smiling, polite movie star. Instead, he was a man who had had enough. He was done being polite, done being pushed around. "I think you're framing this in a very specific way." "Joy," he said slowly, his voice calm but with an underlying force that couldn't be ignored. "Let's talk about this honestly. You're attacking my personal life. You're using it as ammunition to discredit me, to score points in front of an audience." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "And that's not conversation, Joy. That's cruelty disguised as journalism." In that moment, Keanu had shifted from the soft-spoken, kind-hearted actor to a man whose quiet strength demanded respect. And Joy Behar, for the first time, found herself faced with someone who refused to let her control the narrative. The tension in the room was palpable as the hosts exchanged brief, knowing glances. They weren't sure what was coming, but they could feel that this moment would be different, significant. Whoopi Goldberg, the seasoned moderator and the show's stabilizing voice, took an extra moment to review her notes, her focus sharp. At 62, she had earned her place through decades of respected journalism, and she didn't take her responsibility lightly. She'd witnessed Joy cross lines before, intervened when things went too far, and tried her best to maintain some balance on a show that was increasingly veering toward the combative. Sunny Hostin, with her sharp legal mind, typed quickly on her tablet, likely going over key points. She and Joy often aligned politically, creating a strong, unified front that could easily overwhelm guests who found themselves on the opposite side of their views. Meanwhile, Sarah Haynes, sitting quietly to the side, exuded a sense of detachment. Her body language suggested she'd rather be anywhere but in the middle of another heated political debate. She had joined The View, expecting to discuss entertainment and human interest stories, not to become embroiled in daily political warfare. Alyssa Farah Griffin, the newest member of the panel, reviewed her notes with a hint of concern. As the occasional voice of opposition, Alyssa had quickly learned to navigate the balancing act of offering counter-arguments, while being consistently outnumbered and often talked over. She had come to understand the importance of choosing her battles wisely, knowing that speaking out often meant facing the inevitable backlash. The countdown began. 10 seconds to air. The studio audience shifted in their seats, ready for another round of the morning show. The cameras went live. The lights brightened. The View began another episode that would soon become anything but routine. Welcome, welcome, Whoopies. Whoopi's voice rang out, warm and familiar. We have a truly special guest joining us this morning. An actor whose films have entertained millions, whose charity work has changed countless lives, and whose presence on screen and off has made him one of the most respected figures in entertainment. Please welcome Keanu Reeves. The audience erupted into genuine applause, their excitement palpable. Keanu emerged from backstage, his trademark slight smile in place, his movements graceful despite his imposing frame. At 58, he had aged remarkably well. His face held the marks of experience rather than wear, and his eyes still radiated the deep kindness that had endeared him to fans for decades. Keanu's expression remained calm, but something shifted. His posture straightened slightly, and there was an unmistakable intensity beneath his polite demeanor. He paused before answering, his voice still steady, but carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. I don't think I need to justify how I choose to contribute to society, he said carefully. I work with organizations fighting poverty, supporting education, providing health care. I volunteer my time. I donate my money. I treat everyone I encounter with respect, regardless of their background or beliefs. If that's not enough for you, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to perform my values for your approval. The words hung in the air like a challenge. The room, once buzzing with energy, had turned eerily quiet. Whoopi glanced at Joy, her eyes widening slightly, as if silently urging her to back off. Sarah and Alyssa exchanged uneasy looks, while Sunny leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. Joy Behar, unfazed by Keanu's calm but resolute reply, leaned forward even more, her eyes narrowing as she pushed further. Keanu, she began, her voice sharp and pointed. It's not about approval. It's about responsibility. You have a platform. You have a voice. And with that, you have an obligation to use it for something more than just making movies and keeping a low profile. You're one of the most famous people in the world, and your silence in the face of injustice speaks volumes. Silence is not neutral, Keanu. Silence is enabling the very things you're refusing to speak out against. Keanu's eyes met hers, unwavering. There was no anger, no rush to respond. His gaze was steady, as if he was choosing his words carefully, crafting a response that would make it clear this was not a moment he would back down from. I've always believed that actions speak louder than words, he said, his voice even, but now laced with the firmness of conviction. I don't need to shout from the rooftops to make a difference. Every day, I choose to act in a way that reflects the values I hold dear. And if that's not enough for you, if it's not loud enough for the world to hear, then I guess I'll have to live with that. But I'll keep doing what I do quietly, steadily, and with integrity. Joy blinked, thrown off by the clarity and calmness of his response. For a moment, there was a shift in the studio, like a collective breath being held, as if the tension had reached a breaking point. You're not saying enough, Joy insisted, her voice rising again. But Keanu's demeanor remained unfazed. I don't believe my value comes from loud words or public stances, Keanu replied, his tone still measured but now tinged with a hint of frustration. It comes from what I do when the cameras aren't on me, from how I treat others, and from how I show up every day. I believe that's how change happens, through actions, not just speeches. The studio remained silent as the weight of Keanu's words settled in. It was no longer just an interview. This was something deeper clash of ideals. A moment where a man who had built his career on humility and kindness stood firm, refusing to let anyone force him into a narrative he didn't fit. The studio audience erupted into applause, a wave of surprising joy sweeping through the room. The co-hosts, however, exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whether to back their guest or support Joy, but Joy wasn't backing down. If anything, Keanu's response had given her the opening she'd been waiting for. "Perform your values," she repeated, dripping with sarcasm. "Is that what you think this is about, Keanu? People are suffering. Families are torn apart. Rights are being stripped away. And you're worried about performing? That's incredibly privileged." "Privileged?" Keanu echoed, his voice low and threatening now, as if a line was about to be crossed. "You want to talk about privilege?" The tension in the room thickened, each exchange intensifying the standoff. The audience sat in rapt silence, unsure whether to side with Keanu or remain loyal to the hosts. What had started as entertainment had evolved into something raw and real, an argument exposed for all to see, as if they were witnessing a private conflict made public. Sunny Hostin, sensing an opportunity to support her colleague, jumped in. "I think Joy raises a valid point, Keanu. The entertainment industry has immense influence. When people like you choose not to use that influence to advocate for change, speak truth to power." Keanu interrupted, his voice controlled but now laced with a sharp edge. He shifted his gaze between Joy and Sunny, sizing them both up. "You sit in one of the wealthiest areas of Hollywood, earning millions every year, and you lecture me about speaking truth to power?" The statement hit hard, silencing the room. Sunny's face twitched with surprise. Joy narrowed her eyes. "That's not fair," Joy retorted, her voice defensive now. "We use this platform to hold people accountable, to ask tough questions." "No," Keanu shot back, cutting through her words. "What you do is perform moral superiority for an audience that already agrees with you. You create an echo chamber where you can feel righteous without ever actually changing anything." A gasp rippled through the audience. Some clapped, others looked shocked. Whoopi Goldberg, a seasoned host, had seen many debates in her time, but nothing quite like this. Sarah Haynes, who had remained silent until now, felt the need to speak up. "I think maybe we're all coming from places of good intention. Are we?" Keanu's eyes locked onto hers, and though his tone softened, the weight of his words lingered. "From where I'm sitting, it seems some are more interested in public confession than actual good works." Joy's face flushed with anger, her composure starting to slip. "That is incredibly condescending, Keanu. You don't get to walk in here and judge us for doing exactly what you're doing to me." Keanu's voice remained calm but cutting. "You invited me here to discuss my work. Instead, you've spent 15 minutes trying to shame me for not performing activism the way you deem acceptable. And when I defend myself, I'm condescending." Alyssa Farah Griffin, watching with growing concern, tried to diffuse the situation. "I think what Keanu is saying is that there are many ways to contribute to society, and public political statements are just one of them." "Oh, please." Joy dismissed her, cutting her off. "Don't tell me you're buying into this quiet charity deflection. That's exactly what people say when they don't want to take real risks, when they don't want to alienate half their audience." Keanu leaned forward, his patience clearly wearing thin. "You want to talk about risks, Joy? When you speak out on this show, what exactly are you risking?" "Your job." "No, because you're saying exactly what the network wants you to say." "Your audience." "No, because they tune in for these opinions." "Your career." "Hardly. Your political statements enhance your career in this industry." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I've spent 30 years building a career where people across the political spectrum can enjoy my work, where a conservative grandfather and his progressive granddaughter can sit together and both be entertained. My films don't divide, they unite. That's intention. That's craft. That's respecting your audience enough not to weaponize your art. The applause was deafening, sustained, and passionate. People stood, shouting their agreement. The divide in the studio was clear. The audience had made their choice, and it wasn't with the hosts. Joy's face went pale. She had expected Keanu to be defensive, uncomfortable, maybe even apologetic. She had not expected this articulate, passionate dismantling of everything she represented. Struggling for control, she shot back. So, you're admitting it. You care more about your box office than about doing what's right. Keanu's expression turned cold, something hard and unyielding in his eyes. Joy instinctively leaned back as he spoke, his voice quiet but filled with undeniable weight. My father was a carpenter who couldn't read. My mother cleaned houses for wealthy families who treated her like she was invisible. I grew up in a neighborhood where survival was an accomplishment and college was a fantasy. I worked construction, washed dishes, slept in my car, and auditioned for roles where people told me I'd never make it. The studio went silent. Even Joy seemingly frozen in place, unwilling or unable to interrupt. I built this career from nothing, Keanu continued, his voice steady but laden with emotion. I've been successful, but I've never forgotten where I came from. I've never forgotten the people who supported me, who believed in me, who spent their hard-earned money to see my films. And I refuse, absolutely refuse to insult them by telling them how to think. He turned to the camera, addressing the millions of viewers at home. The people watching this show right now are teachers, nurses, mechanics, accountants. They're parents trying to raise good kids. They're people working 2 jobs to make ends meet, struggling with their own problems, living their own complex lives. And they don't need wealthy celebrities lecturing them about morality from the comfort of a television studio. The applause was deafening, with many in the audience on their feet, tears in their eyes. What they had come for in search of light entertainment had transformed into something profound. They had found someone speaking for them, validating them, defending them. Sunny attempted to regain ground. But surely you can acknowledge that celebrities have a responsibility to use their platform for good.